Hello YouTube. The Elder Scrolls universe is full of factions, from the extremely interesting to the mundane. Now, one of the more interesting factions is the faction that stands at the center of one of Oblivion's DLCs, the Knights of the Nine, an ancient fallen knightly order refounded by you as the player. But today I want to delve into the original Knights of the Nine. Who were they, what was their creed, and why did they fall in the first place, leading you to refounding them. We'll talk about that and more in today's video, after the intro. So, the Knights of the Nine, a once very famous knightly order in Cyrodiil. Their story started in the year 111 of the Third Era, more than 300 years before the events of Oblivion and 500 years before the events of Skyrim. In this year, one Sir Amiel Lannes, an Imperial Knight who was considered a war hero at the time after taking part in the War of the Isle, which was a naval war taking place around the southwestern parts of Tamriel, where the Sea Elves tried to invade the Somerset Isles, but were defeated by the High Elf and Imperial Navy in combination with magical storms, most likely conjured up by the Psijic Order. This Amiel Lannes returned from this war a hero and a bit of a legend in Cyrodiil, and upon his return to his home province he decided to found his own knightly order, which was to be in service to all 9 divines instead of just one god. This order would be called the Knights of the Nine, and this new knightly order would have the mission of both eradicating evil around Tamriel and finding back the lost Crusaders relics, which were the weapons and armor of the legendary First Era warrior Pelennor Whitestrake, who was one of the legendary figures who helped Saint Alessia overthrow the Ayleid Empire and who fought with the last Ayleid champion, Umaril the Unfeathered, back in the First Era. For more information on that and the foundation of the human empire, watch my video on the Ayleid Empire and its fall. It's in the description in case you want to know more. Because this video is supposed to be about the Knights of the Nine who came millennia later. Now, these relics would be reclaimed in honor of all the 9 divines, and Sir Amiel recruited some other knightly comrades to join him in this new knightly order and help him search for the relics. Now, these relics, for all terms and purposes, had been lost ever since the First Era, and while many had searched for them, none had been able to find them. Although Sir Amiel seemed to think that this was the best time for him and his knights to try, as in the past century, Tamriel had become more and more peaceful as the Septim Empire united the entire continent. There were very few wars or places where you couldn't relatively easily get, after several centuries of Tamriel-wide chaos in the long interregnum before Tiber Septim came to power and founded the Septim Empire. So Tamriel technically lay wide open and ripe for a search, and thus Sir Amiel and his comrades were optimistic that they would be able to find at least some of these relics and perhaps even all of them. And well, relatively soon they managed to find one. The legend of the Knights of the Nine states that in southern Cyrodiil they defeated a dragon in order to obtain the legendary cuirass of Pelennor Whitestrake. Now, what exactly is true about this legend and whether or not it was really a dragon or just an enhanced legend, we don't know. But since there were some dragons in Second Era elsewhere, it's possible that there was an actual dragon if one from elsewhere survived the first 100 years or so of the Third Era. Who knows? What matters is that they managed to find Pelennor Whitestrake's cuirass, launching their new knightly order into instantaneous fame, and that fame made it so that a ton of knights from all around Tamriel who sought fame and glory all came to Sir Amiel to join up and become part of this emerging but already very famous knightly order. And within just a few years the order became by far the most prestigious knightly order of the Empire, as even knights from very renowned noble families started to join up with the Knights of the Nine. The highlight of these new members was a knight by the name of Sir Beric Findrel, who came from one of the richest and most influential families of all of Cyrodiil and who pledged himself to the order, adding to the order's already extreme prestige around the time. The 9 most famous knights of the time were Sir Amiel, their leader, Sir Beric, perhaps their most famous member, and Sir Casimir, Sir Juncan, Sir Henrik, Sir Caius, Sir Gregory, Sir Ralvas and Sir Torolf. Each of these knights and the lesser members all set out on quests around the Empire to make the Empire safer and, when possible, to search for and claim one of the Crusaders' relics. And over the course of 10 years, they managed to claim a few other relics. Specifically, Sir Beric, their most influential member, managed to find the greaves and sword of the Crusader, and Sir Casimir managed to find the gauntlets of the Crusader. At this point, no one around the Empire doubted that the Knights of the Nine would one day be able to complete the entire set of Crusaders' relics, but despite their successes, as time went on, cracks started to appear in the Order, although at first this was mostly masked by their successes. You see, Sir Amiel, their leader, would personally wear the Crusaders' cuirass, and he encouraged others who found Crusaders' relics to do the same, and as such, Sir Casimir would proudly wear the gauntlets, and Sir Beric would wear the greaves and use the sword. But this would prove to be one of the seeds of their downfall, as while Sir Amiel's argument was that these relics were made to vanquish evil and should therefore be used in order to vanquish evil, it made it so that those who had the relics came to see them as their own possessions, and many others strove to get relics simply for the personal pride of being able to wear them, rather than gathering them for the glory of the Order or the glory of the Divines. This personal pride and their possessiveness over the relics would come to be a deciding factor in the Knights' eventual complete downfall, as 10 years after the Order's founding, the Order already fell apart. You see, in the year 121 of the Third Era, 10 years after their founding, the Septim Empire itself was plunged into chaos as a deadly civil war, the War of the Red Diamond, swept across the Empire. I made a whole video about that war, but very oversimplified, the Emperor Antiochus Septim I died, and then a conflict over the throne started as his heir, Quintera Septim II, ascended to the throne, but her aunt, Potema Septim, yes, that Potema that we can fight in Skyrim, disputed her claim and tried to get her son, the eventual Emperor Uriel Septim III, on the throne. This conflict plunged Tamriel into a bloody civil war, which divided the nobility between supporting the two claimants to the throne. I made a whole video about the conflict, so watch that if you want to know more. But what's important for this video is that it's at this point that the extreme prestige and noble membership of the Knights of the Nine came to bite them, as many of the members of the Order came from noble families which either wanted to or were forced to choose a side in the war. And while Sir Amiel tried to keep things together and tried to keep the Knights of the Nine as a neutral party in the war, many of his most influential members were forced to leave to fight in the conflict, as their families chose a side and they needed to fulfill duties to their families or oaths to their lieges. The first member to leave for war also did the most damage, as it was Sir Beric, the knight whose membership actually added most of their prestige. He decided to leave for war and planned to bring the sword of the Crusader and the greaves with him into war. On the day that he left, Sir Amiel and Sir Caius tried to stop him from leaving, and when Sir Beric could not be convinced, Sir Caius tried to attack him, trying to force him to stay. At least that's the common interpretation, because centuries later, when we learn Sir Beric's side of the story, we learn that Sir Beric said that he felt evil and pride take himself over and that he tried to provoke Sir Caius into a fight. Meanwhile, Sir Caius would blame his own lack of temper control. Maybe it was just a bit of both. But whatever the truth is, Sir Caius was beaten by Sir Beric and he was killed on the steps of the Priory of the Nine using the sword of the Crusader. This violent display in their own headquarters shook the Knights of the Nine to their core, and many knights would follow Sir Beric, leaving the knighthood. And with this official split, the knights were severely weakened. Now, while most people in Tamriel put the end of their story here, the Knights of the Nine actually continued to exist for a while longer, even during the War of the Red Diamond. While their membership slowly bled dry, it's said that some knights still did good things for the people of the Empire, and other knights, in attempts to reclaim the glory of the Order and attain personal glory, still tried to collect more Crusaders' relics, despite the fact that they would never again be complete, at least as long as Sir Beric had taken the sword and greaves and he would not return to the Order. For example, at this time, Sir Ralphus tried to recover the mace of the Crusader, Sir Juncan tried to reclaim the boots, and Sir Hendrik actually managed to recover the shield of the Crusader. But all of that mostly ended in failure and tragedy, as Sir Ralphus was driven basically mad by the trial of Zenithar, which was required to claim the mace, Sir Juncan died before ever reaching the boots, and while Sir Hendrik did find the shield, he was forced to hide it, as apparently it was not safe in the outside world. In these years, the Order's membership slowly bled dry, and while Sir Amiel tried to keep what remained together, probably the final nail in the coffin was the fall of Sir Casimir. You see, Sir Casimir, who in years prior had found the gauntlets of the Crusader, had left for war to fight the forces of Potema. When he returned from his war efforts, he found the knights to be but a shadow of their former self and never rejoined. Instead, he went to Corel, where he went to the chapel of Stendar, the god of mercy. Now, while staying in the chapel, a local beggar kept asking him for aid, and he refused to give him aid every single time. Until there came a point where he got so fed up and annoyed with the beggar that he killed him in cold blood on the chapel floor. He didn't mean to kill him, but he hit him so hard that the beggar was dead. And it was at this point that Stendar cursed him and his family for this heinous act, and that the gauntlets left him, falling from his hands and becoming too heavy to pick up by anyone. This event most likely was the final nail in the coffin for the knights' reputation, and thus, when the war ended and Sir Beric, who returned home victorious from the war, and with a whole boatload of new political influence in the government to boot, he was able to pass an imperial law officially banning the Knights of the Nine out of existence, outlawing the order. In truth, this wasn't really necessary and purely symbolic, as the Knights of the Nine had long since become irrelevant, as by that time the order only consisted of one old man in a forgotten priory, Sir Amiel, the original founder, because he was the only one left. The order had fallen, the knights had died or left, and the relics had been scattered, and the knights faded into history. In a depressed and defeated state, Sir Amiel remained at the priory of the Nine for years, the last stubborn knight of a failed order. And during this time he blamed Sir Beric for everything that had gone wrong, considering him an enemy, if anything. As long after the war, Sir Amiel and Sir Beric were the only ones remaining, with all other knights dead, with Sir Amiel depressed in a priory and Sir Beric in a high imperial government position. Sir Amiel would dedicate the last years of his life to retrieving the bodies of former knights who died, even Sir Casimir, who had dishonored himself in the chapel, and he brought their bodies to the crypt below the priory of the Nine, laying them to rest with their former brothers in arms, all except Sir Beric. When he had retrieved all the bodies and entombed them, Sir Amiel would set out from the priory on one last quest, a quest to try and retrieve the helm of the Crusader, in order to, in his mind at least, redeem the order from its past failures, even though he knew that he was too frail and old to do it at that point. He died, and with him the knights died, although all of their spirits remained, as the spirits of all the knights, including Sir Amiel, but except Sir Beric, would remain in the crypt below the priory to guard the only Crusader's relic that the order had left by the end, the cuirass of the Crusader. During our questing in the Knights of the Nine, we can discover this story and we can speak to their spirits. We find that most of them are steeped in regrets one way or another, like Sir Casimir, who deeply regrets slaying the beggar, and we can help them move on. We can even redeem Sir Beric by slaying his wraith, who, despite his actions in the past, longs to rest and pass into Aetherius with his former brothers in arms. We can then reconcile the old friends, with Sir Beric and Sir Amiel both admitting their past mistakes, and then, with all their former brothers, stepping into the afterlife as friends, while leaving the fate of the Knights of the Nine to us as the player. And that was the story of the original Knights of the Nine, a quite tragic story, and it's sad that something which began so gloriously would end in such a way. But that's simply what happens when ambition and pride takes over. Anyway, that's about all I can say about the Knights of the Nine for today's video, and I sincerely hope that you enjoyed the video and that I managed to teach you something new about the Elder Scrolls lore today. And if I did, why not give the video a like, as that's how the YouTube algorithm decides who is worthy and who is not worthy. And with that said, it's time to thank my top Patreon supporters: Mr. Bernardo Binda, Gabriel Binda, King Chris 20, Steve G, Volcure of Argonia, RB Dash, His Soul, Lexicon, Ranger, Komodo, Rakai, and Sordo Bushido. It's thanks to these people and all the others on screen, so my YouTube members and my Patreon subscribers, that this channel stays afloat, and for that I am very grateful. That said, I will see all of you in the next lore video. Bye bye.